Hey, have you ever just looked at a government project and thought to yourself, why? I mean, why are we getting a brand new, shiny stadium when the local schools are literally crumbling? Well, today, we're going to decode the strange logic behind these decisions where, bad politics can so often overpower good economics. Let's dive right in. Right? It's a story you've heard a million times. A brand new, barely used sports complex goes up while the local clinic is falling apart. Or you hear about that infamous bridge to nowhere. On the surface, it makes absolutely no sense. It seems totally irrational. But what if there's a hidden political logic at play? That's the puzzle we're going to piece together today. In a perfect world, the world we read about in textbooks, the government is this benevolent social planner, just a totally neutral referee, trying to do the most good for the most people. But let's be real. Reality is a lot messier. Government is made up of people. You've got politicians who need to get reelected, you've got bureaucrats who want bigger budgets, and it's right there, in that gap between the ideal and the reality, that things start to get really interesting. And that's really our mission here. The amazing economist Joseph Schumpeter put it perfectly. If you really want to understand a society, just follow the money. A country's budget isn't just a spreadsheet, okay? It's a treasure map. It reveals where the real power is and what a country's true priorities are.
So how do we actually crack this code? Well, our main tool is something called public choice theory, and it's a really simple but powerful idea. What happens if we apply the logic of economics, thinking about incentives, thinking about self-interest, to the world of politics? Let's start with our first big clue.
Okay, so this first concept is called the principal-agent problem. Just think about it like this. Say you hire a mechanic to fix your car. You're the principal, and the mechanic is the agent. You're trusting them to do what's best for you, right? But you can't watch them every single second. So they might be tempted to overcharge you or, do a little unnecessary work.
Now take that problem and apply it to politics. It gets magnified 1,000 times over. We, the voters and the taxpayers, we're the principals. The elected officials and bureaucrats, they're our agents. We hire them to run the country for us. But there's no way we can monitor every single decision they make, right? And that creates a huge risk that they'll start to prioritize policies that get them reelected or pad their budgets instead of what's actually best for the country in the long run.
And that brings us to our second clue, the common pool resource problem. I want you to picture the national budget, all of our combined taxes as one giant shared pot of money. And whenever you have a shared resource that pretty much everyone can get a piece of, you get some very predictable human behavior. It's like this. Imagine you're out to dinner with a huge group, and you all agree beforehand to just split the bill evenly. Okay, be honest. Are you ordering the side salad? No way. You are ordering the surf and turf, the biggest steak, the lobster. Why? Because you get all the delicious benefit while the cost gets spread so thin among everyone else that it's barely noticeable. Believe it or not, the national budget works pretty much the exact same way. So what happens when every single politician orders the steak and lobster for their district? You get this. This massive number is the deficit from a political simulation where lawmakers traded votes to get their own pet projects approved. See, individually, each vote for each project made perfect sense for that politician. But when you add it all up, they blew way past the budget, creating a huge deficit. It's a case of perfectly rational self-interest leading to a completely irrational outcome for everybody. Okay, theory time is over. Let's move from these ideas to a real-world crime scene. We're going to head to the Philippines and look at their infamous pork barrel system to see exactly how these political games play out with real money and with very real consequences. So this was called the Priority Development Assistance Fund, or PDAF, and here's the gist of how it worked. Every single legislator got a huge chunk of cash to spend on projects back in their home district. The official story was, hey, they know what their local communities need best. But in practice, it basically became a political slush fund, a way to reward your allies and make sure you get those votes come election time. The president could even turn the money tap on or off to keep lawmakers loyal. Then, in 2013, the whole thing just came crashing down. An absolutely massive scandal exploded, revealing that billions of pesos had been funneled into fake organizations, with politicians allegedly getting kickbacks as high as 50%. The public outrage was just off the charts, and finally, the Supreme Court stepped in and declared the entire system unconstitutional. But what's really fascinating is the legal reason the court gave. It wasn't just about the corruption, as bad as that was. It was about a fundamental principle, the separation of powers. See, the legislature's job is to pass the budget. The executive branch's job is to implement it. By directly controlling these individual projects, the legislators were crossing a critical line. They were doing the executive's job for them. Okay, I know all of this can feel a little cynical. It can feel like the system is just broken. So how does good, but politically difficult economic policy ever get passed? Well, let's flip the script and look at a case where a major, potentially painful reform actually succeeded: the Philippines train law.
Look, passing any kind of tax hike is usually political suicide, so the people behind this reform got really clever. They packaged it. On one hand, they offered a huge sweetener. They cut personal income taxes for 99% of people. That created this massive, broad base of public support. But to pay for it, they introduced the bitter pill: higher taxes on things like fuel and, get this, sugary drinks.
They also completely outmaneuvered some really powerful opponents. First, they promised all this new tax money would go to a super popular infrastructure program, so people could see a direct link between the tax pain and the gain of new roads and bridges. They used the president's high popularity to fast-track the bill. And here's the genius part. They framed that tax on sugary drinks not as a tax grab, but as a health issue to fight diabetes. That made it way harder for the big beverage companies to fight back. So it's clear that smart political strategy can get tough reforms done. But can we fix the underlying system? I mean, is there a way to directly solve that principal agent problem we talked about right at the start? Let's look at one final and honestly, really hopeful idea.
It's called the Citizen Participatory Audit. And this is a truly groundbreaking program where the government's own official audit agency trains and deputizes regular citizens, people like you and me, to become part of official audit teams. So instead of just reading some boring report, they get to actually go out in the field and see these projects for themselves.
So for example, in one project, these new citizen auditors were trained to inspect farm-to-market roads. They were given actual tools to check if the road was built to the right specifications, and this is the cool part, they used geotagging on their phones to verify if the road the government paid for even existed in the first place.
And this, right here, is the real breakthrough. This is a direct solution to the principal agent problem. It completely closes that information gap by putting the principal, the citizen, right there in the room, literally looking over the shoulder of the agent, the government. It is such a powerful way to build real transparency and accountability from the ground up.
So that brings us to one last thought. After everything we've talked about, from pork barrels to clever tax laws to citizen audits, if you were handed a clipboard tomorrow and given the official authority to inspect one single public project in your community, what would you choose? What questions would you ask? It's a pretty powerful idea, and it's a great reminder that the public's finances are, in the end, our finances. Thanks for digging into this with me today.